I now call this meeting of the South Moody School District School Board to order. This is a business meeting. We have just come back from a retreat talking about school board goals for next year. We will move on directly to our land acknowledgement. Director Jackson.
Thank you. We gather on Snohomish land. This land has been home to Indigenous people since time immemorial. This island, once known as Chakolchi, has been culturally significant and has been a home to people of the Snohomish, Suquamish, Stillaguamish, and Lower Skagit tribes, people of the Coast Salish tribal families, people who are speakers of the Lushootseed language family, people who are perhaps collectively affiliated with the Tulalip tribes, some so, some not so. The diversity of cultures and backgrounds and lived experiences of the Indigenous people for whom this is home is hard to represent in a brief land acknowledgement. And when we speak to our acknowledgement of this Indigenous history, I want to emphasize that we're also speaking to the presence of Indigenous community members with us today, learning in our schools, serving on our land, working in our systems and institutions. And so thank you to all who have brought the diversity of wisdom and experience to care for our students and their experiences in our schools, and the ongoing care and nurturing love that has been given to this land and these waters for uncountable generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned, we were just in a retreat talking about board goals for next year. We will be discussing them again at our board workshop in the second Wednesday of July. That would be July 10th. And then before we vote on them at the July business meeting on the 24th. If you'd like to make public comment at this meeting, there will be a section for that. Please sign up with Ms. McCarr on the back. If you are on Zoom, please use the Q&A function to note your name and location, enter that in, and then you can start typing up your comment, and I will read it during the public comment period. At the end of this meeting, we will be going into executive session for no more than 1 hour for the purposes of discussing ongoing negotiations. Are there any objections to approving the agenda and minutes as presented? Hearing none, the agenda and minutes are approved as presented. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved as presented. We will move on to our presentations period. I'm moving quickly through this because there is a lot of new business, so bear with me. We'll try to make it reasonable. I'll turn this over to Dr. Moshe to introduce those who are presenting our school improvement plans.
So this is our end of year school improvement plan update. You've seen these plans twice this year, as well as had a data summit mid-year. So this is an end of year report from our principals.
Okay, go ahead and next slide. We just talked about our goals earlier in our retreat for this year. Next slide. So you're going to get a streamlined version from the high school of our school improvement plan. I believe I shared a lot of information with you at the beginning of the year and also in our winter update. And again, I'm really looking forward to the beginning of next year with our school improvement plan, giving you some more baseline trend data, basically having to do with our test scores, our SEL, and I'm also, I'm still kind of thinking about our healthy use survey, how I can roll that out and that actually be part of our school improvement plan too. I think we had some great successes and I want to share those with you. Number 2, the I versus they gap, our goal was to decrease it by 10% from 28% to 18%. And I didn't achieve that goal. We didn't achieve that goal. It was only 9% we dropped. So maybe you could give me that as a win, hopefully, please. I was right there. Okay, next slide. So give you some trend data. We did, since last spring of last year, 2023, we did 4 surveys, all basically with the same questions for our students. If you look at spring 2024, and we took this in June, in the past week, how often have you felt supported? Almost never, once in a while, 18.9%, sometimes 22%. and frequently always, again, 63.4%. So we thought that was pretty good. Again, a little dip from fall 2023, but still, I think interesting and promising. Next slide. This was our big focus primary for our staff. What we really looked at, basically, do I have a friend, staff member, or outside adult that I can count on? So if you look at our spring 2024 data, 92.7%, that's kind of the area that's always been, hovering around that percentage. Staff member, this is our huge win right here. It went from 78.4% in winter to 89% in the spring. And I attribute that to, in our winter survey, staff meeting with our staff, we looked at each student. Who were the students that were not identifying a staff member that they could go to? And I think, our improvement in that area is great, but I think the most important thing is that this became an indicator. This survey became an indicator that we can identify students that needed someone to go to. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. So that's a win. Our goal is 85%. Outside adult, 95.1%. Again, that's kind of hovered that whole percentage throughout the year, which is encouraging. Some takeaways. Students who said yes to only one of the three categories, only 4.2% of our students. The students who said yes to two of three categories dropped from 21.1% to 14%. And yes to all three categories, you saw about a 6% increase. So again, I think that's a great thing and that's a win. Next slide. So this is something our goal should be 100%. And I was really disappointed 2 springs ago, also in the fall and the winter. And we did have some improvement in the spring to 71.3%. I want to give credit to our student support team, our Island County workers, our ASC workers that actually went into our advisory classes, introduced themselves. This is what I do. This is how you can find me. Next slide. Academic growth goal. I'm going to share one slide with you. And this is something we all should be really proud of. I think it's a huge success. Go ahead, next slide. So our English Language Arts SBAC score rose from 74.3% to 90%. That is amazing. And I want to thank our curriculum director with our new ELA adoption, our fabulous English teachers. They worked really hard last summer, all throughout the year, really aligned the standards with our new curriculum. They were phenomenal. So I want a big shout out to them. But if you look at something else, the Washington State average this spring was 60%. So we're 30% higher than the state average. I think that is pretty incredible also. Our SBAC scores for math, 38.6%, which you kind of looked at me funny when I said, oh, that's really good. That's a good score, 38% passed. But it improved to 44% this spring, but the state average is 28%. So again, we saw a great improvement in math. So again, shout out to the teachers, kids, and the district. Our science.
Question
Go
about
ahead.
that one. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the SBAC assumes a student is progressing into college. And so the grade levels are kind of tracking a 4-year university trajectory. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Not directly, but that is correct. So basically, if you take your math SBAC and you pass that, that means you're proficient in algebra and geometry. And there is a little bit of algebra 2, but that doesn't mean you're fully sufficient in algebra 2.
Thank you.
But that, again, sophomores, this is a sophomore test. So again, they're on the right track. In our science, these scores haven't been released by the state, and they probably won't be till August. So that's all I have. Any questions?
No questions, just further appreciation for the work that the staff is doing, that you and the staff are doing to make these increases happen. I know that the SBAC test scores in particular come up a lot in community discussions. And I think it's wonderful that community members who are focused on that will be able to have a direct data point to see the improvement happening at the school through the various ways that it's happening.
And what I've done in the past too, and I might do next fall is during our SIP, is I've compared like schools and also area schools, Kamiak, how are our scores compared to other school districts and high schools. And I think you're going to see that we are high achieving. And I think that is a K-12 celebration.
I'll also mention that with the SBAC scores and ALA, that was a thing that students noticed and were like told about. And it was something that I feel like a lot of students felt pride over with our school, and it really did have an impact just knowing about our ELA scores and stuff.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. And one thing that I feel really excited about is that hearing about the ELA curriculum adoption, it sounds as though that curriculum was really designed to put students first and to meet the needs of our learners first, and that there was a correlating increase in test scores is a wonderful side effect of a really great curriculum selection and adoption process, as well as the teaching skill. And I think the converse, assuming that one might design a curriculum adoption to the test, it does not seem to be the case here, that the curriculum was adopted and then test scores rose. And so it's really the best of both worlds.
The biggest challenge I've had with that adoption is the crew keeps coming to present new novels, and then I borrow it and read it. So I haven't read anything off my own personal list in a while, but it's been some really cool titles. And then I'll find myself seeing a kid walk by and I'm like, how far are you in the book? And so it's kind of a cool way to see their lens of it. So I've appreciated that. All right, to the middle school. Hold on, go back to those pictures. We gotta talk about those. These are all those enrichment opportunities that, aren't necessarily measured in some of the data, but the top one is our 6th grade crew at Warm Beach. South Whitby Schools Foundation granted us so we could all wear sweatshirts, which was awesome to see bouncing around the whole time. 8th grade promotion, 8th grade field trip to Seattle. So that's kiddos in Suzzallo Library. We had Mrs. McCarroll went as well. So kids found themselves all over campus. One of my favorite pictures of the day was our students talking to students walking. They were wearing their caps and gowns because they had department graduations that night. So to see that. And then I had a parent email and said, my kid won't stop talking about college now because he got to experience what it was like being on a campus. And so to head into high school, that was one of our goals, is to think about how do we get our kids to associate themselves to Seattle as their local area, their city, for when they're not here and they're traveling. You might say I'm from Seattle and know their city a little more. They all traveled using ORCA cards that we had come to present, and then allow themselves to see themselves in the capacity of a campus somewhere. And then that last one is students at Deer Lake enjoying the recreation we have. So wanted to hit those pictures. All right, next slide. That first goal we had lands to the 3 that we have. And the first one is our social emotional. Looking at our wellness survey of do they have that trusted adult? Next slide, please. We asked this longitudinally from fall, winter to spring. And then in spring, we were looking at the high schools, and we want to align appropriately to what is being asked and what are we trying to measure. Just like the high school, after every one, we looked at students that were saying no or maybe. If they were no more than once, we identified two staff members that could help to fulfill that relationship or connection to students, so that if one was slower to develop or it wasn't necessarily a reciprocal, there was a second part. And then you also had someone to connect with, to talk about how that is progressing in one classroom or one environment versus the other. And then that second one, we started to talk about outside adult, and the percentage aligns really closely to the high school. The number of comments on that one from students was interesting because the majority of them talked about coaches, maybe in their little league or something like that. So that's a huge credit to coaching and mentorship in a lot of programs that our students have. So we looked at our jump from winter to spring, and we started to ask ourselves what happened. Some big takeaways is how we delivered this in classes. The question is very similar to the high school, so we might work on rewording it. We didn't want to do it for this year because we didn't want to change or falsely have an increase in data, but talking about examples of how you might utilize an adult in scenarios that are common in middle school. That outdoor ed was a huge component for us with our 6th graders to really feel connected, and the reciprocity of seeing us as people versus just as teachers or educators. So it was cool to talk to them about things that we've enjoyed or done. And so that was a great experience. And then again, that in-depth dig into those students who are still in that no or maybe range over time, and identifying people and looking at what's worked or what we still need to address. And then also seeing if they didn't have somebody at school over time in our spring one, did they acknowledge an outside adult? And then if they didn't, do we have services at school that they are utilizing? So maybe to slowly build in some connection. Next slide. Number 2 is our CEE data. We went over this in May with Ronnie. So next slide shows our percentage. We're down to 31%. Our staff talked about this a little bit, and then as I'm working with Mr. Sommer and our counseling team, we have a really fresh staff next year. So this is going to be a really huge focus of our PD, is connecting as a staff, enjoying one another, learning about each other, but then also talking about how our classrooms function, so we can maintain this data as we kind of regroup as an entire new staff. So while yes, we met our goal, I'm still thinking very cognizantly about a lot of new people on our staff. Some are from in district and some are brand new. So making sure that we continue this line and be really conscious of it throughout the year. Next slide, please. The third one is the iReady, the fall, winter, spring growth area. So we'll do, I think it's, let's see, next slide, please. So our end of the year results, we're looking at getting at least 80% of students making at least 1 year's progress. So I gave you 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So all grade levels met their minimum goals. Most teachers align at least one of their evaluation student progress growth goals to iReady as well. So even though a science teacher isn't teaching direct math or reading, they are still connected to the progress of iReady. So a science teacher would write a goal similar to a math and or reading teacher so that they have buy-in and input to the progress in iReady. So everybody had a goal connected to iReady in some fashion. So every staff member had connection to this. And I'm going to break it down a little more. Next slide, please. So this is our reading diagnostic. The one on the bottom shows you the one from September to the one on the top is, I think it was April this year. We talked a lot about when to give this diagnostic again in comparison to SBAC and end of the year events and activities. So we're closing gaps and we still have areas in the red. Next slide, please. We really zoom in on this when it comes to helping students, especially with specific growth goals for staff and students, especially in our comprehension and informational text. So we're seeing more green, but we still have areas in red that we dig in a little bit further and talk specifically about trends, demographics, and other gaps that we're still trying to target when it comes to reading. Next slide, please. For math, again, the one on the bottom shows you diagnostic 1 versus diagnostic 3. So we're trying to grow green. That yellow, we call that land of opportunity. So a lot of our students who would be considered tier 2 might take an intervention class such as financial fitness or MetaMath at the middle school level in order to be able to keep up with their gen ed curriculum, but also be able to still fill in those gaps. We also looked at some technology and some subscriptions with our technology crew to think about how we continue to support students to close that gap some more. Next slide, please. Staff really looked a lot at this one, especially with regard to geometry in our curriculum. So as we were looking at our tech subscriptions this spring, there's one we want to embed a little bit more. It's that balance of finding time to get through all the state standards and all the things that we need to do in geometry has been probably the one that's been the most challenging to get to because it tends to be later on in the year and tends to be the least amount of time, that pinch point for us. So when we were looking at subscriptions this year and looking at Edmentum, we're hoping that that will help to improve that. Next slide, please. Staff, one-on-one collectively, one-on-one, I have a lot of conversations with teachers about data, iReady, and other things. And then as a collective, we do this. So we had some takeaways that we wanted to chew on, think about, or intervene. So that first one, we looked at the trends of student progress from fall, winter to spring. There were some surprises for us, especially the drops in spring. We had a lot of students who were making great progress, hitting their growth goals or even near their stretch growth goals. And then in spring, we didn't see that progress or that trend line we were expecting. So if we notice that staff committed to talking one-on-one with students about their iReady experience, the common goal or the common outcome from students was that test burnout or fatigue. So we came back from spring break, did CEE, did iReady, did SBAC. So a lot of students kind of felt like they were kind of tired of the process. So that was a lot for them, in addition to trying to keep up with and teach new concepts. So we saw the most growth from fall to winter in our diagnostics. So we were talking about what's going on instructionally and what's going on from a holistic approach that is leading to that. Where else? Again, the percentages, we were at nearly 90% of students made at least one area of progress. The students that didn't, we looked at, and if they took Edmentum, we were making sure that they were still showing progress in their growth. So we still feel like we have materials or data that help us to see where students were not hitting that proficiency mark for us. And then the big conversation we're having collectively, K-5 is having, and then 6-8 is as well, is iReady the diagnostic tool that is relevant for us now with our curriculum, and then alignment for SBAC. So that's kind of our big picture question we're going to be asking next year as we look at progress of student growth and their academics. So that's kind of where we as a staff are looking at things, and they've tasked me with some things to do between now and when I see them again in late August. And so that might reflect in our SIPs next year. I believe that's my last slide. Awesome. Questions?
I'll just reiterate what I said for Mr. Patton is the effort from yourself and your staff is clear and very much appreciated by the board.
I notice bigger picture that when we have a focus on both academics and social emotional learning, instead of taking away from a focus on academics, it seems to improve academics, which is a hypothesis that's somewhat hard to prove and a bit counterintuitive, but it seems like we're proving that.
And that kind of echo on that, Joe, a lot of our conversation would be when we looked at our spring SBAC or our iReady, if we noticed a student had dropped. In addition, we're talking about what we know about them as a student or as a person versus their academics only. So we could acknowledge anecdotal things that we knew that might not reflect in a score or might have hindered their growth, but we acknowledged maybe it didn't reflect what they know or their progress as a whole, but might have impacted their test score specifically.
Joe, I think there is a correlation, and the correlation is if a student doesn't feel like they belong, if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel comfortable, if they don't have a connection, they're not going to learn. So that's why that focus of SEL needs to be there.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to our interscholastic activities report, which is that Mr. Lagerstad? One more time. Let's get you a mic real quick. Thank you.
Okay. Here are the numbers of participants for South Whidbey High School and recognized Washington Interscholastic Athletic Activities, the WIAA, for the 23-24 school year. At the high school, post-COVID Falcon participation remains impressive, higher percentages than even pre-COVID numbers, in fact. Of our 406 total enrollment, South Whidbey High School and SWA, we had 416 students participating in 19 activities, with 136 males and 104 females participating. We also have many multiple sport athletes. In fact, 53% of our athletes participate in more than one sport. Overall, South Whidbey consistently has higher participation rates than other schools in the Emerald Sound Conference. Falcon participation numbers continue to be strong in tennis, both boys and girls, track, boys and girls, and boys cross country. We have had increased numbers in boys and girls wrestling, football, and fast pitch. There has been a slight drop off in boys and girls soccer, volleyball, and girls basketball. Our ASB and athletic department have had a focus on students that have limited financial resources. Through intentional and enhanced communication, as well as looking at outside sources, we have increased our participation with free and reduced lunch students from 23 to 58, which is about a 150% increase. This is a truly successful effort, getting a more demographically inclusive population engaged in school. And we know that engaged students perform better in the classroom. South Woodby continues to excel on the field of competition. Falcon individual athletes were recognized with 32 athletes named to first team all conference. 15 of our 18 athletic teams or individual of one of those teams competed in district tournaments. Teams or individuals that represented the Falcons at state competitions are boys and girls wrestling, boys and girls track, girls cross country, boys golf, a 5th place in state finish for boys cross country, and an amazing 2nd place finish for girls tennis. Also, a great story, our boys swim team with 3 sophomores and a junior competing in the larger 2A classification finished on the podium in 8th place. We call that a Falcon Flex. The Cougars of our South Woodby Middle School also had a stellar year, both in participation and awards. Cougars won league titles in cross country, girls soccer, and girls track. With the inclusion of 6th graders in our building, our participation numbers significantly increased. 6th graders competed in cross country, girls soccer, girls basketball, wrestling, and track. Of our 256 total enrollment, we had 354 participating in 11 activities. With 164 males and 190 females participating, we also have many multiple sport athletes. In fact, 64% of our Cougar athletes participated in more than one sport. Tradition never graduates, as evidenced by our Falcon athletes' continued excellence in the classroom. An amazing 18 of our 19 teams were recognized by the WIAA for their high academic achievements. These awards are based on current GPA. Including cheer, we had 13 teams receive the Distinguished Team Award, GPA of 3 to 3.49, and 6 teams received the Outstanding Team Award, 3.5 to 4. This success is due to a true student-athlete community where kids, teachers, coaches, and parents all participate in the student's success. Our athletic programs in the South Woodby School District are led by truly remarkable human beings. These traits are recognized by their peers. We had 3 of our coaches be recognized as Coach of the Year. One of them sitting back here at our tables. Kimmy Johnson has been a great addition to our Falcon Athletic Department team. Her organization and communication skills are truly superior. She is faithfully and enthusiastically connected to our kids and community. She knows everybody, and everybody knows and loves Kimmy. As we look forward to next year, South Woodby Schools Athletic is both excited and we have a sense of awareness. With the passing of the bond, we look forward to new and upgraded facilities. We are also aware of possible challenges that budget issues can bring. Also, in the world of athletics, gender-defining issues are a growing topic of social conversation. As required to participate in high school sports in the state of Washington, South Woodby will continue to follow the WIAA governing body's rules and regulations, which are established through the laws and governance of the state of Washington and the National Federation of High School Sports. Overall, our South Woodby athletes continue to excel on the field and in the classroom. Our coaches are dedicated to their athletes and programs. And administratively, we seek to improve the quality of their experience, guided by an education through athletic philosophy.
Thank you so much. I want to offer some gratitude for that report and just really want to highlight the increase in demographics of students joining who may receive free and reduced lunch. Having that opportunity, no matter what their family's financial circumstances, is absolutely above and beyond, which is fantastic. And it should be the norm, and now it is the norm, and I love that. I also really want to appreciate you naming in your report the WIAA stance on gender and gender protections and how gender and presentation plays a role in student athletes' lives. And because in our workshop earlier, we were talking a little bit about microaggressions and things like that. You know, in my head, just noting that the sports are still called boys sports and girls sports, I have a curiosity around whether there's an opportunity for students to identify if they are non-binary, if they choose to, like on any of their registration paperwork or anything like that, because I wonder if that would inform WIAA's statistics around joining a boys sport or a girls sport. It's just a curiosity.
Basically, not that I'm aware of right now. Basically, it's however the student consistently identifies, they choose the gender of the sport to turn out.
Okay, but if they identify as non-binary, there's no way to check a box or to
Not that I'm
what I'm
aware of
assuming
right
is-
now
okay.
on the final forms, that at some point they're going to have to make a decision on what team to turn out for.
Of course, yeah, and I love that that's organically happening. I just had a curiosity if there was any work around increasing the capacity for students to let their coaches or let WIAA know what their presentation is, what their chosen gender is, so that those statistics start being marked.
Right. And what I can say is
measured.
there's definitely work being done on the issue. And so I'm assuming, I think it's safe to assume that that is also a consideration. That is I mentioned it because that is a popular, hot, however you want to say it, topic in our state right now. So I'm sure that's being considered also.
Thank you so much.
I actually, you raise a great question. I'm going to turn to Christy, and I don't know if she knows the answer. I know in Skyward, student gender can be changed to the gender that the student identifies with, but I don't know if there's a non-binary selection. I don't know if it's still a binary selection.
On Skyward, you can select non-binary.
You can.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a matter of time, but the politics around this particular issue of the competition between among the genders and how it is viewed is WIAA. Actually, I'm one of the superintendent reps, and I know Joe is our rep for WIAA. It's a hot topic, and it's a diverse state in terms of opinion. So it will be an interesting progression.
And I mention it because it not only is it a hot topic in our state, it's a hot topic in our league. We have our league is made up of 13 private schools and I should say 11 private schools and 2 public schools, and all of them we have a range of philosophies. And I know, Brooke, I know that you're familiar with. We've dealt with this already, and my expectation would be that we'll deal with it again, and that's why I mentioned it in my report, so the board is aware.
And please continue, well, to the rest of the administration, since you're leaving us, please continue to let the board know how we can assist with that.
The board does have a viewpoint on this issue, which I think it's important to share. And I would summarize it as we want our athletes by policy to be able to compete in the gender to which they identify. And so adding non-binary, I'm not sure if athletics will get there. But I just want to be abundantly clear to our staff and our coaches that my understanding is that we absolutely support that identity. And it becomes very difficult when the safety of students potentially is compromised. And that's where folks get really uncomfortable.
I very much stand with that summary, and I think that our policy does as well.
Thank you very much for being more explicit with that statement. I share your perspective, and I also think that remembering the purpose of high school and middle school athletics programs is really to support each student who chooses to participate to be the most well-rounded, successful, healthy, and fully expressive person they can be, and that people of all genders can benefit from that experience, and that the programs will lose nothing if they become more welcoming and expansive for all to participate in the fullness of their self-expression.
Any other comments on the interscholastic activities report?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for being the best athletic director that a WIA rep could ask for. It's been really great working with you and learning from you. And I really just really appreciate the way you model sportsmanship and a balance between a drive to win with the need to honor and respect teammates and opponents. It's just really great to see. So thank you so much.
Okay, we will move on to the student board members report.
Okay, to start off, the seniors had their farewell assembly with awards, along with jazz band and choir performances, which was really fun to see. It was just a lot of amazing performances too. I remember all the students just being blown away by how talented everyone was there. Seniors graduated with speeches from student chosen Ian O'Brien, class president Grace Jones, and valedictorian Audrey Merrick, and staff chosen India Belora. And the graduation was just really nice to see.
So summer practices for fall athletics and then also some spring athletics are kicking off for various sports such as track, volleyball, cross country, football, and soccer. And soccer is really exciting to see because there's 38 participants like for summer practices, which is significantly larger than it has been. Yeah.
Debate Club's constitution was officially ratified recently by the school board, and they will be operating next school year, which is really fun to see.
And then 8th grade also had a successful promotion ceremony towards the end of the year with speeches from ASB, their staff chosen speakers, and student selected speakers.
I really appreciated all the speakers at graduation coming at the topic of graduation and moving on to the real world from very different perspectives and with very different topics, but all around the same idea, which was fantastic. They all did a wonderful job. Any questions for the students?
I also just want to thank the team for putting on both a beautiful graduation ceremony at the high school, but also the technical and logistic aspects of it. I think it's the only school where I can consistently expect to leave graduation on time and enjoy every minute of my stay. And I also heard expressions of gratitude from many community members for the closed captioning, which was very supportive.
Thank you both very much. We will now move on to our recognitions of the staff retiring. Dr. Moshe.
So we have been squeezing every ounce of work out of our folks who are leaving us in 2 days. There's 2 more wake ups. So they know how, I know that they know how much we appreciate them because we did get the opportunity to celebrate prior, but as a board and superintendent team, I think it's only fitting that you pause in your deliberations to have cupcakes. And I know there's at least one audience member who wants to show some appreciation. So I'd like to give our sign lady the opportunity to provide a token I think she's providing to someone. Not really sure what's happening, but oh, it's for Dan. Okay. We need to give her a mic, okay?
Dan, you were not with the school district when my three children went through K through 12 in the school district, but you joined the school district when my grandchildren started moving through K through 12. 2.5 weeks ago on June 8th, I was able to witness my first great-grandchild graduate from South Whidbey High School. That's a long time that you've been with the district. This is in celebration for everything that you have given to the district from my grandchildren and some who are still in the district and my great-grandchildren. And I have learned so much from you. I've been in corporate accounting and systems management, but you have taught me so much about public accounting and what you folks go through to consistently provide amazing education, amazing results, and still comply with all of the state laws and federal laws and anything else that is put upon you. And it's just incredible to me. So I'd like to wish you a happy retirement. I will warn you, though, you will still be working, believe me.
We will take a 5-minute recess for cupcakes and stretching. Okay, we will now return from our recess and move directly to public comments. Ms. McCarr, do we have any public comments?
Yep, me. Okay, I come before you with a different hat on.
Well, could we have a moment? Thank you.
I'm representing the Performing Arts Boosters today as their president, but to speak on their behalf. It came to our attention that the 5th grade band class is going to be cut from next year's budget, and that Mr. Harshman is requesting more than the $1,200 stipend that he gets for the year to teach the middle school jazz band. We know and understand the need for budget cuts across the district. We recognize the challenge of scheduling in 3 schools. We also recognize the challenge at the elementary school for classroom space. However, we believe that the 5th grade and middle school jazz bands are essential to the total band programming. Many, if not all, of the high school band students started in the 5th grade band class, and those in high school jazz band started with middle school jazz. 5th grade band is a time students are introduced to the instruments. They have the year to find their favorite instrument. They learn how to play, how to read music, how to listen to themselves, but more important, they listen to others. They learn to work together to make a single song. Middle school jazz students meet with Mr. Harshman all year before school, usually 3 times a week, not receiving school credit, but requiring much more development, practice, and commitment to their instruments and to the program. Middle school can be a challenging time for students who are attempting to find their place and acceptance for who they are. The middle school jazz band provides a safe and inclusive environment where individual students can be comfortable expressing their individuality through music. In the words of Stan Keaton, jazz is a distinct music that depends and thrives on individuality, and yet the individual is not oblivious to others, nor are they immune to their feelings. A session in jazz is comparable to an open forum where theories and opinions are discussed openly and freely. More than any other classroom environment, the jazz environment promotes inclusivity and individuality within the framework of creating unity as a team. The complexity of jazz provides a challenging curriculum that promotes higher learning. Many of our jazz students have been high academic achievers and have gone on to attend the top colleges and music schools across the country. The middle school program feeds the high school program, and there are parents whose students would not have been in the South Whidbey School District if not for the band, primarily the jazz program. The jazz program should be recognized for the critical role it has played in the fabric of our schools. Some deep details you may or may not know. Last year, approximately 160 students were in the South Whidbey Band program. Approximately 30% of these students were free and reduced eligible and may not have had a chance to play music outside of school. We have homeschool students that enroll solely for the band classes. 5th grade band had approximately 45 students enrolled last year. Middle school jazz had 21 students enrolled last year, or participated last year. South Whidbey has an award-winning band program. Judges are always amazed at our students. These students perform not only at their school concerts, but for additional community events, graduation, 8th grade promotion, the foundation at the gala, Earth Day benefit, and much more. Throughout Washington and beyond, these students proudly carry the South Whidbey name and place Langley on the map. Each grade level is the foundation for the next step in the band program. Our high school bands excel because of the structure created in the 5th grade band class. The award-winning high school band, jazz band, achieves because of the foundation from the middle school jazz program. Research has shown that the best time to develop music skills and begin instrumental studies is in the 4th and 5th grade. I think Chris Reichtel said it best. I support providing a well-rounded education for our students. The arts are an essential part of this. The arts teach the whole child, engage all learning styles, and lead to the development of powerful learning habits that include such essential 21st century skills as creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. The arts also provide our students with keys to understanding the world around them and an array of strategies for learning, interpreting, and expressing their thoughts. We ask that the 5th grade band be reconsidered and that we work together, the PAB and the district, to find a way to keep middle school jazz in place. For 5th grade band, whether it be part of a music class, a stipend position, a before or after school program, which is not favorable because of the equity for the students that need the school transportation, but it could be fortified with high school leadership band students or something completely different. For middle school jazz, if the class is viewed as a team that it is, instead of as a club with an advisor, we might find a solution. Athletic coach stipends for a single season are almost 3 times as much as the middle school jazz band stipend is given for an entire year. The band director is more like a coach than an advisor. They both teach, they both coach, they both plan, compete, and perform. The PAB wants to work with the schools and the district to keep the band program strong now and for years to come. Let's find a way to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that statement. Are there any other public comments? Okay.
I think it's on, right? Okay. Charlene Davenport Clinton. Earlier this year in a workshop meeting, I shared a story with you about my granddaughter's first and second grade ALE class and the waterfall code word moment. What these first and second graders taught me was that they had already learned the concepts of working together as a team, listening to one another with respect, sharing their own thoughts, coming to a compromise, and then consensus, skills that require and support critical thinking. I have another story about May, and she has given me a thumbs up to share with you. A few weeks ago, I was watching May for Mom. During our visit, she said she needed to water the vegetable plants in Mom's garden and wanted me to see the plants. Watering bucket in hand, she went to the garden and watered the plants because that was her responsibility. On the way back to the deck, she saw a baby slug struggling on a patch of gravel. She told me that she has to help this baby slug and asked me to give her a rhododendron leaf so she could scoop up the baby slug and put it back where it was supposed to be. However, first, I was to ask the rhododendron plant for permission to take the leaf. So I asked the rhodie for a leaf. May was able to get the baby slug back to an area where it would be okay. As we put the watering bucket back on the deck, she looked up at me with the biggest smile and a twinkle in her eyes and said, "I saved a life today." Then we went over to the fir tree swing and had fun swinging. As she was getting off the swing, she suddenly said, "Oh, Mimi, we forgot to thank the tree for letting me swing." So we gave the tree a big hug and said thank you for letting May have a time to swing. That day, I learned more about what my granddaughter was learning in ALE. May has done well in the ALE program. Academically, she has math down, and we continue working on the reading skills. But what she taught me that day was another waterfall moment. She has learned about being responsible. She has learned to respect not only her peers, but all of life, the animals, plants, the ocean life, all of the beautiful nature we have here on this island and in the surrounding waters. She has learned gratitude for all of the life around us. Not only has she learned these concepts and their meaning, she is living out these life-affirming principles. I am pushing 75 years of age, yet I consider my youngest 8-year-old grandchild to be my elder. I was never taught these principles in first and second grade, and my guess is that perhaps a few of you were not taught these principles either. Yet May has embedded these skills within herself before third grade. So I am here to encourage the board and the superintendent to do their very best to ensure that programs like ALE, outdoor classroom, farm school, the cooking classes, and embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the classroom continue for our students. These waterfall moments are reality for them. May cares about all life surrounding her and protecting it for the future. But the greatest responsibility falls to our student board directors and their peers. Elementary and middle school students listen to their parents, teachers, other adults, but they watch high school students like hawks. They watch how you interact with others, how you respond to certain things, what you support and believe is cool, and they hang on to every word you say. I encourage you to take on the responsibility and spread it among your peers of listening to younger students, modeling out these principles for them. Help them to dig a little deeper in applying these principles to their lives, and most of all, really impressing upon the next generation of high school students how critical it is to continue passing these norms to future generations. May is my elder teacher, and she lives in what her teacher told me is the power of the circle, something we all need to learn a little more about. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that lesson. Are there any other public comments? I see no Q&A notes in the online Zoom meeting, so we'll move on from there. We are moving from public comment to new business, and our first item of business is Memorandum 2324-35, approval of superintendent search firm. This, after discussion, we will move on to a roll call vote, but we will first begin by allowing the folks up on the dais to provide some insight into the discussions that we've been having previously and their own thoughts on the matter. We have had results from community input. As I recall, there were over 30 individual inputs from community members, and the board has had the opportunity to look at those and take them into account before making our decisions. I'd like to thank Ms. Macaro for putting them together in a readable and useful format so that we can take a look at those details. It's hard to read here, but it's listed by firm and then scores that the individuals gave in each of the parts of the rubric that we developed, as well as overall points and then average points for each of the firms as a whole. And it does note what type of person, staff member, community member, parent or guardian, that sort of thing, each participant is. Is there anyone who would like to go first in saying something about this? We've been discussing this for several months. We had an opportunity to workshop it, but before we take a roll call vote, I wanted to provide the opportunity for folks to discuss their thinking somewhat.
I can share a couple of thoughts. First, I really appreciated the community member participation in this survey. It helped inform my thinking. I also would have liked to have seen kind of a mean, median, and mode breakdown of responses, because I did see some outlying scores that I thought skewed the average more than, may have had a disproportionate impact on the average. But I was still able to make an assessment of the data that I thought helped inform me. And I feel that when I vote tonight, it will be based on both my own interpretation of what we learned and our assessment of our needs and the input I've received from community. So I just wanted to say thanks to everyone who participated either through the survey or in our previous discussions on the topic.
I really appreciate each of the three firms' approaches. They were each different approaches, and I really appreciated the thoughtfulness that each of them provided, from the overarching beyond the end of the search that most of them brought, but also that Alma particularly specialized in. I thought that that was very valuable. I did take into account, looked at these community scores and took that into account, as well as thinking of track record and experience that weighed strongly with me, as well as fiscal responsibility with the district. And I really appreciated, they each had their individual strengths. One of the things that stood out to me was HYA's mentions of student involvement in the process. I thought that that was one thing that stood out for them. Yeah.
I plus one to what you said. Each of these firms brought unique strengths, and it was a tough decision on my part for how I'm going to vote. And when I did my scoring myself, there was only 4 points separating the firms, and so I just want to appreciate them all for their time and coming to present to us, and also to the community members who filled out the survey.
Okay, if there's no more comments to be had, we'll move on to the roll call vote. I will,
I do have one more comment. And that's just to say, I really appreciated the discussion around the value of the services being offered by each firm and the sort of apples to oranges comparison factor of the cost point of our various firms on offer here. And so to reflect upon the potential professional development capacity that we might gain if we were to move forward with Alma was a thought-provoking exercise for me. My vote probably won't reflect the value of that, but I see the value of that and really appreciated the chance to think through it.
okay, we will begin with advisory votes. Representative Dalmar, which of the firms would you advise us to select?
Ray and Associates.
Representative McKnight, who would you advise?
Alma.
Okay, thank you very much for both of those. We will now move through in order of seniority with chair going last, even though I am not the senior member of the board. So Director Greenherron, which?
HYA.
Director Jackson,
Ray and Associates.
Director Johnson,
Ray and Associates.
Director Downs,
HYA.
and I also vote for HYA. That means that HYA has won with a 3-2 vote. Thank you all very much. We will update that in the memorandum, get it approved. Now we will vote on that memorandum, vote to approve that memorandum, and look forward to working with HYA and Dr. McDuffie's team. Okay. All those in favor of approving the memorandum 2324-35 with HYA as the selected firm, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. These will be more straightforward going forward. Memorandum 2324-36, approval of the update to South Whitby School District Policy 2162, education of students with disabilities. This is one of those that we looked over at the last workshop and mostly just updating language. Any discussion to be had on this one? Okay, student representatives, advisory votes on this motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving this memorandum 2324-36, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Memorandum 2324-37, approval of update to South Whitby School District Policy 5006, certification revocation. This is another of those that we've just updating the language. Any discussion to be had? Okay, student representatives, your advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving memorandum 2324-37, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum has been approved. Memorandum 2324-38, approval of update to South Whitby School District Policy 5404, family leave. This one had a little bit more language from WASDA in it, and then our additional tweaks to language. We had a question of whether we were going to keep maternity as the term in there, but we were keeping it because it connected to state law and contracts, correct? Yep. Okay, any discussion to be had on this one? Student representatives, your advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving memorandum 2324-38, please say aye. Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Memorandum 2324-39, approval of WASDA recommended new policy 2402, English language arts mastery-based learning and credit. This is the first of a cluster. I will ask if there's discussion for each, but Ms. Maccaro is only going to bring up this first one because there was not a whole lot different between each of them. If there is discussion on any of the others, we can certainly bring it up. Otherwise, we're going to keep moving forward. Is there any discussion or debate on this one? Okay. Student representatives, your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-39, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Memorandum 2324-40, approval of WASDA recommended new policy 2403, math mastery-based learning and credit. Is there any discussion or debate? Okay. Student representatives, your advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-40, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Memorandum 2324-41, approval of WASDA recommended new policy 2404, science mastery-based learning and credit. Any discussion to be had on this one? Okay, student advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-41, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Memorandum 2324-42, approval of WASDA recommended new policy 2405, social studies mastery-based learning and credit. Any discussion on this one? Okay, student representatives, advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-42, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Just a couple more. Memorandum 2324-43, approval of WASDA recommended new policy 2406, the arts mastery-based learning and credit. Is there any discussion to be had on this one?
Sorry, I just wanted to break this up a little. But I also just wanted to speak to, we've heard tonight public comment related to the arts, and we heard in our school improvement plan updates about the impact of arts in students' lives. And so just to shout out the arts and see, I'm glad they're getting equal representation in this policy update from WASDA.
Thank you very much. Any other comment or discussion or debate? Okay, student representatives, advisory votes.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-43, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has been approved. Memorandum 2324-43, approval of WASDA recommended new policy 2407, health and physical education mastery-based learning and credit. Any discussion or debate to be had on this one? Okay, student representatives, your advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-44, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has been approved. Memorandum 2324-45, approval of WASDA recommended new policy 2408, integrated environmental and sustainability education mastery-based learning and credit. Any discussion or debate on this one? Okay, student advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-45, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Nay. The memorandum has been approved. Our final of the mastery-based cluster, Memorandum 2324-46, approval of WASDA recommended new policy 2409, world language mastery-based learning and credit. Any discussion or debate on this? Okay, student advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-46, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has been approved. We are done with that cluster. Thank you very much. Next on the list, Memorandum 2324-47, approval of 2024 Chromebook purchase for one-to-one student program. Dr. Moshe, I'll pass this over to you for explanation.
This is a continuation of our Chromebook refresh, and it comes out of the capital levy for technology, and it is part of the plan for our replacement technology.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion or debate to be had on this?
What would be the impact of the board not approving this expense?
The Chromebooks would not be refreshed, so those were broken or as they break would not be refreshed, and Chromebook books have, I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. They have a life expectancy. And so they are meeting their life expectancy and they need to be replaced. So if they were not, we would diminish our ability to do one-to-one technology.
Any other comments or questions? Student advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-47, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Memorandum 2324-49, approval of food service management company renewal agreement number 1. Dr. Moshe, this is a continuation of an ongoing contract.
That's correct. This is the continuation of our work with Chartwells. So this went out for bid last year. The board received the bid, approved the bid, and this is the first renewal of that contract. It gets renewed each year.
I'd like to note that my only disappointment with this is that we will not continue to have the services of Ms. Matthews, who was an excellent representative from Chartwells and amazingly responsive to student and community and staff feedback.
And she knows that and appreciates that and is not here this evening, which is surprising. But she has assured us that she will be here through August and will be training her replacement. So I anticipate we will get the same level of responsiveness as we go forward.
Any other comments, discussion, or debate on this?
Any changes to prices or any other terms of the contract?
Dan?
So the price is contractual with the contract, which is last year's price plus CPI as of April or February of 2024. So that changes automatically every year. It has been reviewed by OSPI to make sure that the rate actually matches what they believe it should be based on those factors. The only other change you're going to see, and it's not in this, is we will have an addendum to this that basically has to do with a non-compete clause of not hiring an employee of Chartwells and that type of a situation, which will come at some later time. I don't think you have to actually approve that part of it, but it will happen. So yeah, this is very boilerplate. The only changes is the year, the dates on it, and the amount based on the contract.
Thank you.
Any other comments, debate, or discussion? Student representatives, advisory votes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-49, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Memorandum 2324-50, approval of the November 2024 levies. Dr. Moshe.
Thank you. So the board had an opportunity to discuss this. We are proposing here this evening, and you can see it in front of you, a levy, 2 different levies for the November vote. On July 10th, at your next meeting, you will get a breakdown of the work we plan to do with the capital levy. That is $2.5 million per year for 6 years. And the EP&O levy is recommended at the maximum that we can collect based on our enrollment. And so they are in front of you. You will see that there is some highlighted in yellow areas that we need to complete, but they don't substantially change the resolution. They're just technical issues that we have to fill in. But also highlighted in yellow are items that the board has the purview on. So you could tell us to change those numbers. You could accept them as they are. You could not do this at all. This is up to you. We've put it in front of you with our recommendation, but it's really the board's decision.
And these are replacing expiring levies. The EP&O is a 3-year, and the technology and capital improvements is a 6-year, just as the same as the levies they are replacing.
That is correct.
Any other discussion, comments, debate?
I will say one more thing. If you'll notice that the capital levy is at 2.5 million. It will represent a tiny increase in the first year and then will actually go down. And that is an increase in the funding we are collecting. We are currently collecting 2.25, and we're suggesting that we collect 2.5 annually for the 6 years.
Mostly because the 2.25 million was selected 6 years ago and costs have gone up.
That is correct.
Okay. Student representatives, your advisor.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah. At the workshop, Mr. Pullman presented the impact to tax rates on various values and figures. Is what he presented at the workshop? Is that what's represented in here as the default values?
It's really close. Adjusted the EP&O educational program and operations slightly to an even 3.9 instead of 3.9 or 3.75. So the first year it's about a 41 on a $750,000 house. It's about $41, and then the next few years it's just a few dollars additional each year. So it's about what we had looked at, within a couple dollars probably.
Great, thank you. And I just want to point out that we were able to approve the laptops a minute ago because of funds from the levy that's about to expire. So we can see the benefits in this very meeting of having these funds.
And the stipends for music programs and coaches come out of the EP&O levy, one of many things.
That's correct. And I think you'll really be pleased to see what Scott has been able to put together. A lot of things are already changing across the district under his leadership and the use of the funds that we currently have. So I really am confident that this levy will continue to allow us to not only maintain our technology, but maintain those buildings that are not covered by the bond. So we have to keep remembering that the bond is only for the 2 campuses that house students. That's what we're working on. And so any other upgrading or updating or maintenance would come out of this.
The community center lawn looks amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, more importantly, and you'll hear about this likely, but the roof leak that happened in that what used to be the 6th grade hallway, which is where Woodhaven is and so on. There's mitigation going on in there, roof replacement and renovation based on the damage from the water. So again, we need to be able to do those things when they happen.
Anything else? Okay, now we'll go to student advisory votes.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving memorandum 2324-50, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has been approved. And our last memorandum for the evening, memorandum 2324-51, approval of the South Woodbury School District support to the addition of the Student Representative Network to the WASDA bylaws. This is an interesting situation in that it's the first time I've made use of this policy as board chair. Our policy provides the opportunity when there is a deadline that cannot be met by a meeting for the board chair to make a decision on behalf of the board and then for the board to ratify it. So this is because there was a deadline for this and due to the board's consistent support and push towards improving student voice at the WASDA level, I felt that I was within my rights to put South Woodbury forward supporting this and then provide it for y'all for ratification. For description of exactly what it is, I'm going actually to turn it over to Student Representative McKnight, who is one of the unnamed authors of the piece.
So yeah, I am listed at the bottom as one of the few student representative network members who helped co-create this. Basically, this policy bylaw change adds student representatives to every single committee and the main WASDA committee, to all WASDA aspects. They'll have advisory votes and stuff like that. One thing I found really interesting is they follow a format similar to actually how we, like our advisory votes and stuff, which shows that we're kind of right there with the curve, you know? They're also going to be elected by the Student Representative Network, which is really good because it's really a lot more student representation and stuff. I think ultimately this thing adds like 24 more student reps to the state level, which is a lot, and adds a lot of representation for like East Coast and West Coast, not East Coast, east side of Washington and west side of Washington. Yeah, and also just really supports what's it called, student representation in WASDA in general. And there's a lot of stuff that just does that throughout this.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments, questions, discussion?
Thank you so much, Carter, for being one of the authors on that. And I appreciate you taking that initiative and looking forward to where this work takes our student reps.
Yes, thank you, Brooke. I really appreciate you being ready to take this action and being able to make an informed decision to take this action based on past board behavior and values that have been expressed in prior meetings. So thank you very much.
Okay. Advisory votes from our student representatives.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-51, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Thank you very much. We'll move out of our new business to reports, and I will turn it over to, are we going to Mr. Field for our financial and enrollment report and budget preview?
So this is June enrollment and May financials. We'll go to our enrollment first. There was some chatter about this before. We missed it by a quarter FTE. Way to set the bar, Dan. Really appreciate that. So overall for the entire year, down 1 FTE versus budget, which is spectacular in the world that I work in. So everything according to plan on that realm. You can see where the bottom line with the red dots, that's the budget, or sorry, next slide, please. That's our budget line and our actual line just lying right on top of each other, below everything for prior years, like we've seen all year long. Next slide, please. And again, this shows our declining enrollment trend over time for the entire year. Our red bar stayed flat all year long, no drop off in the end of the year, which is really good. We held our students all year long. Next is our financial report. Oops, I double spoke that. So we're 75% of the year and right on budget with our revenue and expenditures to date. So historically, right where we've been, the graphs below are our revenue and expenditures. And again, just following that same historical trend, nothing out of the ordinary happened in the month of May, unexpected, that would cause those lines to vary from historical, very typical May month. Next slide, please. This is with encumbrance. So we're slightly over encumbrance and payroll, under budget with MSOCs. We're well under. With payroll, we're slightly over. There's some additional paras that were added through the years. Needs were assessed that caused that to hop over budget, but just barely. But overall budget and expenditures with MSOCs, we're still only at 98% of the budget. So we're well inside our capacity for the year. That encumbrance on MSOCs will likely continue to decrease as we start closing down 23, 24 POs, because purchasing for the current school year will start slowing off as we start queuing up purchases for next year. This is our historical on revenue for the last 2 years, kind of right on top of each other. Again, the trend is right in line with what we had last year. There was nothing unexpected in the month of May that would cause this to vary from prior years, or really any unusual activity to report outside of ordinary business for the month of May. This is our fund balance projection as a percentage of expenditures. And again, still just bumping right along at 25%. Again, just status quo. We haven't had any real unusual ups and downs in expenditures that would drive this outside of what our historical practice has been. Here's our summary of other funds. Again, with Scott and Ian, with what you've approved for the computers and the work that Scott's been doing with the capital levy, we'll start seeing more of the capital expenditures occurring here as we approach into August, but we'll still have plenty of budget capacity for the current year. The rest of the funds are chugging along just like they should be. There is, again, no real exciting things happening as far as out of ordinary business in the month of May. And with that, I'll take any questions if we have any.
I appreciate you anticipating the question on why the payroll was over Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, we'd mentioned it was partly related to special ed, but there was more than that with those paras participate in special ed activities, but it wasn't all 100% to that. There was just need as assessment made, and we added staff as we needed to meet the needs of the students. So.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay. Okay. Budget preview, Mr. Poolman, one last time.
Yes, one last time. So we're looking at the budget for our next fiscal year, which runs September of 2024 to August of 2025. Again, this is going to be a work in process until you actually approve it, which is in late July. So things will change. I guarantee you the numbers will change by the time Paul does his presentations in July. We are required to have a balanced budget. Basically means we need a starting fund balance and revenue, less expenditures, and ending with a positive balance. We did change this policy to 1/12, so it's a little higher fund balance required in the budgeting. And we have to have budget hearings, and that's going to be at this timeline. So July 10th is the budget needs to be available to the public, and Paul's right there. He's sent it off to OSBI and he's reviewing it. So on the 10th, it's a budget presentation, which is going to be the workshop style. Go over the budget and also the 4-year projection. And then back on the 24th, this is your official budget hearing. So it's an opportunity, again, to stop your meeting, give the community an opportunity to ask questions, and then reconvene. And then you would officially adopt the budget, which is then sent to the ESD by August 1st and then off to OSPI after that. The funds that you're going to see in this budget is the general fund. That's when we talk about the most. That's our big operating fund. But there is capital projects, which the change in the coming year is there will be bond activity in there, which traditionally we've only dealt with levy funds. So it's going to be much larger. It's actually going to be our largest fund that we have next year, larger than our general fund. And then the debt service fund, which is going to be for the repayment of the bond funds. We have no debt service at this time. We have paid off our previous loan, and so the bond will be the only thing in there. The ASB and then Transportation Vehicle Fund. So when we talk about the issues, there's basically 3, and it's really down to 2. Enrollment, and then the state basic education funding model. The loss of federal funds is pretty much phased out. We had very few federal funds in the current year. That really happened in the 2 previous years. But the funding model, we've talked about the problems with that, but 2 of the areas in that model are inflation. And you probably know that IPD, or the implicit price deflator, cost of goods going up was 3.7%, but MSOX only went up by 1.7%. So we have a continual battle of losing ground. And the other thing is that this model doesn't fund or underfunds a lot of the programs. There are programs that receive no funding whatsoever, and there are some that receive a lot less than it actually costs us to provide the service. When we talk about the budget, we're really talking about a funding model. So I want to be real clear, we're not talking about the number of staff they're paying for. We're talking about how much money we get. And they use a staffing allocation as one of the formulas in there, which is based upon student enrollment, but it has nothing to do with the number of staff we have in a building. So to determine what the staffing allocation is, we look at enrollment, and this is our current enrollment, and Paul's talked about where we are at about the 1106 number for the current year. And we move into our 24-25 estimates. So we're looking at 1106 today. We are looking at 1,082 roughly, and this is FTE, full-time equivalent. So this means a student that goes full-time. If they only go half the day, they'd be a 0.5, et cetera. That includes our basic ed program, our typical K-12 program, and this is excluding the TK program. But K-12, we're looking at about 1,021 FTE. About 55 kids participated in our local ALE program, and then another 6 to take advantage of the online program through Spokane Virtual Academy. So you can see we're down, roughly 24 students from our current count in the coming year, or roughly a 2.1% difference. So when we look at funding, we have to come up with these numbers. So basic ed, 1,021, our alternative program at 61. We get funded for our local program and the Spokane program at the same rate, though we do pay for the Spokane program. Special education in our 3 to 12 age group at 180 FTE, our CTE program 60, the bilingual at 7, and about 35 kids take advantage of Running Start. We are just a conduit. It's not a funding mechanism for us. So the prototypical school model points this out because it continues to affect our revenue. The McCleary decision basically changed from a model where you got reimbursed based on each student or each teacher or certificated staff education and experience individually to a state allocation model where every district across the state, whether you're South Woodby, Bellevue, or Pell, received the same allocation. And then they added regionalization and experience. And you've heard me say this a million times, but regionalization and experience was not kind to South Woodby. We started with 24% on top of that allocation. We are now down to 18% for regionalization. We started with 4% for experience of our teaching staff. We are now down to 1%, and that goes away next year. So the result of that, whoops. And in that formula, there's 3 classifications. And the reason that's important is that they get funded at different levels. You have classified staff, certificated staff, and administrative staff. They all have a different dollar amount in that formula. Too fast, way too fast. But the important part is understanding how that works or doesn't work. So if we look at this, you can see in 2021, I'll use that as an example, the implicit price deflator, 1.6%. So OSBI said, we are increasing that salary allocation you receive, the base salary allocation, by 1.6%. The general understanding is that's, and it's not really a pass-through, but most of our staff thinks that, and the unions tend to agree that that's the minimum amount that employees are going to get on their salary increase. Well, if we look at that, and we add the regionalization at 22%, which has gone down from the previous year, and the experience factor, we get an enhancement of 26%. So on top of that, $67,585, we get another $14,869 for regionalization, $2,703 for experience. We got $85,157, which was a 0.01% increase over the previous year. So we didn't get the 1.6% increase. We basically got no increase. And this is where this has failed South Woodby. The next year, that 2% becomes 0.38, the 5.5% becomes 3.8, and we jump to the next year, and that 3.7% increase that we add to salaries becomes 2.84. And again, it's 3.7 on the ones they fund. It's not everything, but we're only getting a lot less than that. So this is the biggest driver we've had in our funding problems is our revenue just doesn't seem to change. And if we look at revenue, we're getting it from 5 sources. We have our property taxes, which you guys renewed tonight for another few years. We have district-generated funds, state apportionment based on enrollment, state funding for categorical programs based on enrollment, and federal funding. So we're looking at $21,707,047 as our estimate for 24-25, which is up about $490,000 from the current year. And most of that being in our state apportionment numbers. So that changes a little bit. But what it really means is that we haven't gained any ground. If we go back 6 years ago to 2018-19, we were generating almost $21 million in revenue for general fund at that time. Jump forward to next year and it's $21,707,000. That's a 3.55% over those 6 years. And if we think about how costs have gone up, inflation of MSOC salaries, benefits, et cetera, we have a flat revenue stream. We really aren't getting it. Part of it is we have fewer kids, so we get less apportionment. And part of it is that funding level that we're seeing is less than what inflation actually does. So we move into expenditures, and I'm just going to try to do a high level thing tonight because in a few weeks, you're going to see a lot more. Couple of definitions. So when we talk about expenditures, we have 2 main groups of expenditures. The first is employee costs, and that's the salaries, and then the benefits that we pay for as a district on those salaries. So it's going to be your FICA, your Medicare, retirement, which is roughly 10% on all wages, paid family medical leave, workers' comp. The medical insurance, that's $1,178 per person per year if you work 630 hours a year. So that's about a half-time position. The problem is with a lot of our classified people, they're not funded. And if they're not funded, we're not getting that dollar amount, but we're still paying a large medical benefit for it. So, that's another problem with that formula. If they don't fund the same number that you're paying for, you're still picking those costs up. And then there's the non-employee costs, which we refer to as MSOCs, material supplies, other costs, and that's your paper, your pencil. And the big things in here are things like liability insurance, our state audits, legal fees, utilities, those type of things. So you'll see when we talk about professional services, this is where liability, utilities, and those things live. So object code is kind of looking at those two groups. What are salary and benefits? What are supplies, professional services, travel? And that's the MSOC part of it. And you can really see that the biggest increase is going to be in salaries and benefits, and it's going to be in professional services. And we look at professional services, we're looking at our utilities, our insurance. If we are providing a service from another school district or another educational facility for students, that falls within that category too. So you'll see that's why those things increase. Just another way of looking at the same numbers without looking at numbers, you can see those huge increases over time. And that's, again, salaries, benefits, professional services. We go back and look at our revenue at 3.55% over a 6-year span, and you look at these things, you start to see the picture of why school districts right now are starting to struggle. We also look at it by program. So you had, basic education, the federal special purpose, that was the ESSER funds. And you can see in 21-22, we had $1 million. The next year we had 1.8 million. This year it's 25,000. And next year it's gone. So we talk about that ESSER cliff. That's what they were referring to. And I think we're past that because we're a year into it. But, that's almost $3 million we received in a short period of time that helped to mask all the things that we were seeing coming up. The one that really sticks out, if you look at this, is going to be special education. These are compared to what we had budgeted last year. And, since September, we had added, because of great student need, a lot of support staff. We're adding another special education teacher next year, and we have a professional service in there for a fairly large amount of money. So that makes up that big difference of what we're seeing in special education. So it's a big jump from where we thought we were, last year at this time, but it's all based on needs. We're also going to look, we talk about the budget in July, the capital projects, which again is going to be much larger because it has a bond in it. The actual work for the bond comes out of capital projects. The repayment for the bond comes out of debt service. And then the ASB and Transportation Vehicle Fund. So as a summary, we're basically looking at fund balance for general fund at about $5 million. Looking at revenue at $21,957,047. And if you have a good eye, you're going to see that's $250,000 more than what I showed you before, because we have put a capacity in there of $250,000 for revenue and expenditure. So if the district gets more grants or something comes in, we don't have to do a budget extension. If we don't receive the money, we won't spend the money, but it's a placeholder. And then the expenditures would bring us down to a fund balance of about 4.3 million. So we're looking at spending about $700,000 this year out of fund balance. It was intentional. We could have reduced staff. And as we talked about that, we thought it was more important to maintain the staffing we have today because of the needs we have and spend some of our fund balance down. We did reduce costs by about $700,000 also in a lot of other areas. We didn't refill a few positions for people that retired. We reduced costs in other areas. We're looking at ways to reduce costs of time off. Maybe we don't replace somebody who is gone for the day if we have somebody else, sitting in the same office space, or a variety of different strategies to reduce costs. But again, planned on doing this. Most likely we'll continue this next year. That 1/12 comes to about a $1.8 million fund balance of $22 million. So we are well above that. And it seemed like a better plan to reduce it over time than it was to try to make a sharp cut, because it's going to affect the service that we could provide. So as Dr. Moshe had mentioned, we did not RIF any employees this year, which is really rare if you look around us. A lot of my people that I work with in other districts that are doing this are making massive cuts. So we've been pretty lucky to not have to do that. The other thing that, is still unknown is we are negotiating with the classified union. We have talked about some of that. I don't know where that's going to end. We've planned for some of it. Transportation Vehicle Fund, We have money in there now. By the end of the year, we'll have probably $500,000. By the end of next year, 712,000. Expect that Scott will talk with his transportation people and come up with a plan for buying buses to use that money in the coming year. Capital projects, this is the one where that 33 million is basically the bond sales that's happening soon. We'll be here by September 1, so it'll flow into capital projects and then the expenditures to offset that. Debt service is basically, you know, the revenue and the expenditures that are repayment of that bond. And then the ASB, basically looking at increasing the revenue a little more than their expenditures. And Mr. Field had reached out to work with kids this year and the timing didn't work. So we'll plan on doing that for next year. So still committed to doing that. It's just that there wasn't enough time this year. And finally, you'll go over the 4-year plan. What does enrollment, revenue, expenditures, and fund balance look like during the next 4 years? And it's really, there's 2 parts to it for me. You look at what do you think's going to happen, and then you look at what do we have to do to mitigate what we think is going to happen, because we need to get to that balanced budget rather than giving you a plan that says, yes, we're going to be broke in 5 years, not where you want to be, not where you will be, and not where bond rating companies want you to be. So the fact that we do have a bond, I want to make sure that this, you know, is a very positive. In 4 years, we are in, you know, in good shape the entire time. So that's kind of what you have to look forward to. And I'm sure Mr. Field will do a wonderful job with that. Any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Curious if you're going to do any pro bono consulting for people working in other sectors now that you're retired.
Not pro bono.
Well, I'm already on the Langley Finance and something committee. Yeah, I would be happy to do something like that. Yes.
Right on. I just wish I could deliver reports to my board of directors with this level of clarity. I'm clear on the numbers. I'm not as clear on how to present them in a way that's so informative and engaging. So thank you.
You're welcome.
While on some boards, the silence from up here would be an indication of confusion or not understanding, I think it is a testament to the job you have done in educating us. And I think that it's a huge pro in your favor that you have shown yourself as not just a finance guy, but an educator. So thank you. We'll now move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Moshe.
It's always hard to follow Dan's reports. Hopefully it has become very clear what we said earlier, which is we have, it always, in my mind, every time Dan presents, it seems so easy. But the level of work that went into getting to this point where we have a balanced budget and we have an intact staff, despite you know, the concerns of the things we've trimmed away, I think that it speaks volumes to the work that we've done together to maintain as much program as we can. On to the superintendent's report. So congratulations to John Patton and his staff for being recognized by the State Board of Education for our student performance increases over the past few years. And that's not even counting what John shared with you tonight, because this was from past years. You probably saw it in the Navigator. I want to give John an opportunity. He spent a lot of time this past end of school year dealing with an issue or several issues, and he's going to update you on how we walked the talk of restorative practices this past spring at the high school.
Can I say too soon still?
Yeah.
No. So I'll just be real brief. So there were some challenges, and I just want everybody to know that I had at least 20 restorative conversations face to face with staff, students, and parents and guardians. And most all of those, vast majority of those were proactive. And I think there was healing. There were apologies, a couple conversations we had to agree to disagree. But there was healing, and we still maintained accountability. And it sounds like our seniors actually had a wonderful barbecue put on by the parents, which is great. I'm glad that happened. And also, they still had a parade. So through the process, it was difficult for me because the week before and the week of graduation, you are very focused and busy and have many things to do. So when you have an issue pop up like this that sucks a lot of time and energy out of your efforts to reward our seniors was challenging, but I think we got through it.
I just wanted to say thank you for stepping forward and doing what we say we do and walking that walk, as you said, as Dr. Moshe said, and putting in that time and mental and emotional energy that it takes to have those conversations that result in either agreement or continued disagreement, but understanding. So thank you very much.
I wanted to let the board know that on Thursday, Thursday, August 1st from 1 to 4 p.m., the Langley Police Department is sponsoring a national night out. 6th, really? Okay. Tuesday, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Excellent. Tuesday, August 6th. We've been asked to set up a booth of some sort with district information, highlighting any special projects or an interactive display, something like that. So it would be wonderful if board members wanted to be out to meet and greet. That would be great. We'll be there. The admin team, at least it's not a time when teachers are in, but we will have some kind of a presence there. So
If you put the tent next to the CATA tent, I can be at both.
yeah, it's August 6th, 1 to 4 p.m. Thought about info on upcoming levies, the use of the bond money, pictures, things like that. So we are engaged in the first sale of the bonds for the first $30 million. And I have had more time with actuaries than I care to admit. They're an engaging bunch. But that sale of the bonds happens tomorrow morning. So the other thing we're looking at, and Marnie is the board member on this team, is the criteria for selection of our construction manager. What I want to have Paul update the board on is we had some bids that went out for potential summer work this coming July and August, and there is likely a delay. So Paul, can you update the board on where we are, please?
Yeah, so we were going to grade here at the elementary school, grade for the playground, and then do the first phase of the courtyard. We reached out to 9 contractors on the small work roster. 8 recognized the request. 4 came, did the pre-site walk, and 2 of them bid. The bids came in like 150% higher than the estimate than we were expecting. We're working with our architect team to find out where we may have missed on our estimate, but the biggest thing is we had a statutory limitation of $350,000, and the bids came in higher than that. So the procurement method that we were using is now disqualified, so we had to reject the bids. So effectively, those projects that we had planned for summer, we won't have time to get done because now we're going to have to do a full formal bid. So that work is on pause. It will get done. It'll get done in the same design, but it'll likely be performed by our GCCM, which we're going to select here in August and be packaged when we have a single contractor that can do all of it. We're going to get an update on Monday from our architect to try to find out what necessarily caused our estimate to be so far off. It's likely due to the compressed schedule and the timing of us getting our bid on the street and trying to push to get this done before mid-September. But it was a little bit of a disappointment when those came in and they were so far off because we're not able to do it by statutory limitation. So that's where we are with that. But the designs are still good. We still have the opportunity to change if we want to refine the courtyard or the playground. Just the timing is going to need to be pushed out into likely next summer.
All the work we did is still the work. It's not that people's time was spent in vain. It's just really disappointing because we thought we were going to have something to show in September. And so, and Paul put it nicely, but basically it has to be, those bids were under 300,000, or not the bids, the estimates were under 300,000 and the bids were like 700,000. It was wild.
Yeah, there were over $428,000 and $182,000 for the two bids that we received for the courtyard. So there's a lot to peel back of what may have caused that. We'll hopefully get some more information. I don't know how much of an update we'll have because our the cost estimating team was really frustrated, trying to determine what happened because there was just recent activity up in Oak Harbor 3 weeks ago. So they thought the pricing was right where it should be because they had really comparable recent timing. So they're kind of scratching their heads too. It's really likely due to our compressed timeline to open a bid for work to start next week. We'll just have to wait and see. And like Dr. Moshe said, we're having our sales call tomorrow for the bond. So the money for the bond actually is not landing till July. So it'll all work out. It'll get done as designed. It's just going to take a little longer than anticipated.
And it may be that we combine it back into a single phase as opposed to what we were doing, which was a 2-phase project for each of them. So yet to be determined. Disappointing, but we're going to regroup and get it done. I wanted to give you an update on our high school graduates. It's a report that Gay Bitts spends a lot of time on and John verifies, but this year we had, this is about post-high school plans for our students. 53.4% plan to go to a 4-year school, are accepted and going, assuming, right? 17.8% to a 2-year school, which means that over 71% of our students are going off to college. If you add the 4.1% that go to trade school, we have over 75% continuing their education, 1.4% to the military, 10% to work or taking a gap year. 5% of our students return to the high school because they are students who are not 21 and have not received a high school diploma due to some significant needs they may have. 5% undecided. So again, our students are going off to do wonderful things after high school, and that's a testament to all the work that's done now pre-K through 12th grade by our staff and students and admin teams. So it's always good to reflect and see that our students are leaving us for bigger, better things. That's all I had tonight.
Just for clarity, it was the playground and the courtyard that's not getting done
This summer.
this summer. So there's gonna be the hallway, and is that
We're not having any
Not the
work
hallway.
done.
the stairway?
No, the stairway actually was already put off.
That wasn't planned to be this summer as of 3 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's disappointing. We still don't have the permits back from Island County, right? We have playground equipment approval from the Department of Health, but we don't have permits back. I think, it's just gonna have to wait.
All right. Do we have a legislative report, Director Jackson?
Yes, thank you. I would just like to let community members know that if you're interested in speaking to people who serve in our state legislature or candidates who wish to serve in our state legislature, there are a few opportunities to ask questions of those in office and those running for office. I'm reading from a South Whidbey Record article. The Clinton Community Council is hosting a nonpartisan moderated forum on July 9th for 10th legislative district positions. This includes 2 state representatives and 1 state senator. This will be in person at the Clinton Community Hall at 6 p.m. And there will be an opportunity for conversation with candidates. So a great time to ask about the commitment to addressing public education funding issues or any other public education questions you may have for those people running for state office. You can also send questions in advance to info@clintoncommunitycouncil.org. And the deadline to get those comments in for the July forum is July 5th. Additionally, the League of Women Voters of Whidbey Island plans to host a virtual candidate forum in partnership with Snow Isle Libraries, and that is coming up at 6 p.m. on July 18th via Zoom. That will include candidates for county commissioner, but when it comes to state education funding, it will also include candidates for state senator and state representative. And the League's forum committee is currently drafting those questions, and they are going to be sharing their Zoom link on lwvwhidbey.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other board comments or reports?
Yes, I have a couple things. First and foremost, because I just have it up here on my website, I'd like to offer that Island Shakespeare Festival has for their second year, they will have a guest theater, Red Eagle Soaring, out of Seattle, coming on July 8th for a 6 p.m. performance. Red Eagle Soaring was founded in 1991, and it is a youth theater education group for Indigenous folks. Reading from their website, in bringing together Native youth to learn about the technical aspects and process of theater, they also build a community of people interested in learning about, sharing, promoting, and supporting Native arts and cultural lifeways. They also support and helped inform the Since Time Immemorial curriculum developed by OSPI. They are a dynamic group. This will be their second year on the ISF stage. They're so fun to watch because they're just so excited to move into a new space and make it their own for an evening. I highly recommend it. You can find out more about them on the ISF website, so islandshakespearefestival.org, or you can look them up if you'd like more information at redeaglesoaring.org. And I have one wee pamphlet that you can fight over later. Second thing, I just want to offer my gratitude and congratulations to South Whidbey School District and their amazing showing at Pride on Saturday. It was such a great event. It was my dog's first Pride, so it was extra special. But I saw tons of people that I knew, and SWSD was among, and South Whidbey High School was among so many different community groups and individuals that all came together to have a parade. And I was with a group of people who don't know Whidbey very well, and so I had to explain our parade culture. And so that was interesting too. But I just want to say thank you for that. And related, thank you. I see that there is a rainbow flag now secured at the top of the tennis courts. Thank you, Scott, for facilitating that. And the GSA and trans and queer youth communities and clubs are planning to have their banner reinstated in the fall. And so stay tuned for a public banner raising to support and promote Pride all year long. The third quick thing is I missed graduation this year, but I had the opportunity and the pleasure of being on a panel with the League of Women Voters. They are a group that is located across Whidbey Island, and they had about 40 participants in their general meeting on June 8th. And they asked 5 of us to participate in a panel about journalism being a cornerstone of democracy. And so there were 2 folks from the South Whidbey Record, and there were 3 folks that are elected officials. Kira Erickson, South Whidbey Record, who I learned is the solo staff member of the South Whidbey Record. Jesse Stensland is the editor of the South Whitby Record. And then the elected officials were myself and Brian Stuckey, who is OH City Council, Oak Harbor City Council, and Marion Johas, who is a Whitby Health Board of Commissioners member. And so a lot of the conversation centered around local, rural, small newspapers and how they are able to stay alive in these times. Some of the impact we talked about were outside buyers coming in. South Whitby Record is not owned locally anymore, and that is impacting the news and their resources and budgets. Just the lack of resources and staff, they're going to have to move their space, for example. And so their actual physical digs are getting smaller and smaller, and a little farther and farther away from the action here on South Whitby. How to attract voices in their editorials, in their opinion pages, and then how to regulate and recognize the opportunities and challenges of having an online outfacing source. Everything from access, there is a paywall to get on the South Whitby Record. And so that can sometimes discourage people from moving forward past their 3 free articles. And how do people interact with that, with those articles and with that work? So it was very informative. And it was such an amazing afternoon with the League of Women Voters. This is journalism and democracy is a part of their 2-year study and platform as part of the National League of Women Voters Assembly. And so they are actually, League of Women Voters are actually spearheading an effort to make this one of their primary concerns in their next year of work together as a national group. So I really appreciated being able to go. Thank you to Brooke for facilitating that. And I think that was everything. Thank you.
And quick question about the piece was, I know that some of the rationale for the conversation stem from our conversation around implicit bias just within writing. And I noticed in the past week, there was a article published about a fellow school board member where it ended by saying that she was a stay-at-home mom who is also a full-time nurse. Was that conversation brought up at the forum at all? And if so, can you speak to maybe some of the discussion that may have been had?
That is a very good question. It was touched on implicitly several times during the conversation. There was a very specific question wrapped around how social media and how Facebook and other outlets can skew information and actively inform what the public believes versus what is true and real. And so we did spend about 15 minutes on that. We also spent time recognizing that because the South Whitby Record in general and the Whitby News Times are understaffed and their resources are getting smaller and smaller, that they are, for example, one of the things I learned is that Kira has to take her own photos unless she can have a volunteer photographer with her. And so sometimes they're pulling from stock footage, sometimes they're pulling or, just taking the best picture she can, but she is not a trained photographer. She's not a specialist in that area. And so some of those things are informing how the paper goes out and how it is presented. There wasn't a lot of questions directly related to implicit bias especially around gender. The League of Women Voters skews a little older. And so a lot of their conversation was more a worry that resource would disappear.
Any other board comments or reports?
I'll be brief. I had the opportunity to march with the South Whitby School District parade group, and it was amazing to see the district literally walk the walk. So thank you to Maddie for setting that up and for all the students who held the banner and showed the community what we stand for.
Okay, thank you all very much. We'll move to executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations for no more than 1 hour. No action will be taken during this executive session. Thank you and good night.